I'm interested, you were careful to say we don't offer legitimacy even if we offer dialogue, but I want to explore that, and I want to do it by looking at perhaps the most powerful case study that you've been involved with, and that is your years of involvement with Sri Lanka. You have tried over many years to bring the Tamil Tigers and the Sri Lankan government to a peace agreement. We can now say you've conclusively failed, but I want to unpick what you did. You took the decision to talk to Prabhakaran, the leader of the Tamil Tigers. Was that a difficult decision to take?
No, I wouldn't say so, because we did that on the request of the Sri Lankan government. It was not an individual Norwegian decision. Sri Lankan President Chandrika Kumaratunga asked us to do it. Her successor, Ranil Wickremesinghe, and also the present President, Mahinda Rajapaksa, they all encouraged us to talk to the Tigers. How can we then sit in Norway and say, no, we should not talk to them?
Well, you have to obviously lend your own independent judgment to it. Here is a man and an organization listed as a terrorist organization by the UN, the EU, the United States, most international players, and also a man whom you know has ordered the suicide bombing of civilians in Sri Lanka, the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi in India. This is his track record.
All that is true, but we will also have to be fair to admit that also government leaders in Sri Lanka and in many other nations have done evil acts, maybe or more or less of the same.
So you're saying there's moral equivalence between the sovereign government of Sri Lanka and Prabhakaran and the Tamil Tigers. You see an equivalence, do you?
There is not a moral equivalence. But there is a need to talk also to Prabhakaran, and I think we were very close to success in the peace process in 2002-2003. We spared, from my perspective, 10,000 lives throughout that period, which otherwise would have been lost.
Well, we can talk about that, but before we get there, I'm very interested in the dynamic, because I can't think of any other senior diplomat who engaged with Prabhakaran, certainly not in this way. How many times did you meet him?
Well, also Chris Patton from the European Union met him.
Yeah, I know, but you met him. I want to know how many times you met him.
10 times, I think.
At least 10, you've said, yeah. Now, that's significant.
I think the problem is that I didn't meet him much more often, because, I mean, let's look into a character like Mr. Prabhakaran. Hardly any Tamil will tell him the truth. Most Tamils will tell him, you are God's gift to the Tamils. Same applies to so many other government leaders as well. They're always told, I mean, people meet them to please them.
Yeah, but you may have delivered a tougher message than that. But,
absolutely.
But were you not, by the very fact that time after time, despite the violence that he was orchestrating, you would go back and talk to him again, you'd try and organize ceasefires, you would try and organize autonomy talks. You kept going back, and thereby you gave him a legitimacy and a credence which, looking back on it now, we can say, perhaps, was counterproductive.
No, it was, from my perspective, absolutely productive. It's true and right that it gave the LTT at the time some credibility and some legitimacy. That was also the great wish of the international community. Also, the government of Sri Lanka wanted us to do that. I think the big failure was that we were not able to convince Mr. Prabhakaran, nor, for that matter, in reality, the Sri Lankan government, of the beauty of federalism. Federalism is a system accepted by India, by many European nations, and if they have accepted federalism, at that time it would have been accepted to nearly all Sri Lankans, and you would have found a peaceful settlement. At the end of the day, Prabhakaran did not dare to take the risk of federalism, nor did the Sri Lankan government.
Did you ever come to a point where you trusted Prabhakaran's word?
Yes and no.
Well, what does that mean?
In the sense,
I'm interested in the yes bit. You're saying that there was a part of you that trusted the word of a man internationally regarded as one of the most dangerous terrorists in the world.
When he told me that he would stop military actions or terrorism for a certain period of time, he kept his word. The day after, on many occasions, the LTT stopped killing Sri Lankan government soldiers or Sri Lankan government officials. But they were not able to keep the promise for months or years.
Do you think you were naive?
No.
Do you think you, frankly, are qualified to go into a conflict as deep, as long-running, as dangerous as the Sri Lankan conflict, as a Norwegian, and really, really be confident that you know the issues well enough, you can see through the rhetoric and the spin well enough to make a difference?
Yes, I think, I mean, there are lots of peace processes around the world where that have been the case. I mean, we did not succeed in Sri Lanka, but if you look around the world, whether it's Mozambique or El Salvador or Guatemala or Burundi or Sudan or Nepal, in all these cases, I mean, there are still difficulties. Foreign involvement in different ways have been successful.
Well, we'll talk about some of those cases
just
coming up.
On the
before we finish on Sri Lanka, you've talked about failure. You've acknowledged it, and it's obvious that in the end, the solution was a military one that the Sri Lankans were determined to seek, and the Tamil Tigers as a force have now been destroyed. At least that's what they say in Colombo. There's one important thing I want to go over with you. You were contacted towards the end of the military offensive by two leaders of the Tamil Tigers, not Prabhakaran, but two other leaders, who said they wanted to surrender, and you appear to have tried to facilitate their surrender. What happened?
Well, we told them absolutely bluntly, as we told the LTT all through the last months, time has come to give up arms. The only way you can survive is to raise a white flag. Please, if you have a loudspeaker, use it to tell your intentions in the theater to the government forces and try to surrender. Then I believe that they tried to do that, but they were killed. Exactly what happened, I have no way of knowing.
Who do you believe killed them?
I mean, they were killed by government soldiers. I think that is pretty clear. But
you have no doubt about that, because, of course, the government has said that they were probably killed by Tamil Tigers shooting them from the behind.
Basically, the government has said that that these occurred at the same time as a breakout exercise from Mr. Prabhakaran. But at the end of the day, of course, I do not know what happened there. And maybe we will know in a few years' time when historians are able to
But I'm interested in your view, because you got to know the Tigers and you got to know the Sri Lankan government over many years. Are you telling me that you believe at the very end of this conflict the Tamil Tiger remnants were ready to surrender and the Sri Lankan armed forces deliberately ignored their attempts to surrender and were determined to kill them?
I will not judge on these individual incidents because there are so many of them. I cannot judge. But now the armed struggle in Sri Lanka is over. Time has come for the Tamils to reorient their struggle in a peaceful fashion, and time has also come for President Rajapaksa to look into the future and to create a generous multicultural state where all three communities, Tamils, Sinhalese and Muslims, feel included in the state.
So what does the peacemaker, who, his word, failed, do now? Because what we see in Sri Lanka right now, in the north, close to the conflict zone, are almost 300,000 civilians who are held in what can only be described as internment camps, with international access very, very limited. What are you doing now?
We are working very closely with the so-called co-chairs, which is the United States, European Union and Japan, besides Norway, to get access to these camps. We believe that the UN, International Red Cross, for that matter media, should have open access to the camps to make certain that there is no abuses in these camps.
But your problem is that the Sri Lankan government no longer sees you as an honest broker. On May 17th, they announced they were no longer prepared to accept the Norwegians and you as mediators.
No, I mean, there is no conflict to mediate any longer, so that's obvious. But
No, but the point is, I don't think they trust you anymore, because they believe over time you proved yourself too sympathetic to the Tamil Tigers.
But interestingly enough, we have had lots of informal discussions with the Sri Lankan government throughout this process. But of course, we cannot act alone, but with major Western powers as US and European Union, but also adding Asian powers, I think we can encourage the government now to give open access to the camps and for the President Rajapaksa to raise to the occasion and give a hand to the Tamils to solve the Tamil